Let us just remember the structure that we are following for the last 2 days. Before getting into Mahabharata and the issue that we are taking up inside the Mahabharata, we are doing two things. For the benefit of those who are not from a political science background or a sociology background, I have been introducing you to these concepts, what they are basically. And secondly, I have been showing you origins of this in the Veda, so that we understand that this is not all from the blue into Mahabharata directly. It is there in Mahabharata because it is Vedic tradition to have it in Mahabharata. Mahabharata is Panchama Veda, it is fifth Veda, that is why it has. And then we go into Mahabharata. So, whenever we do this, don't think that we are circumventing Mahabharata and doing other things. We are all with different backgrounds here. You have to, for example, some people may not know human rights as a concept itself, that there is a concept called human rights. Oh, you have been here, you were here, right? See, this whole workshop is being conducted for you. Yeah, see, you are the single audience for this and you are not attending. Yeah. Yeah. See, whenever I was drafting the slides, I kept only you in mind. Yeah, please. Okay. So, not for you. When I speak about general human rights as a concept, he is the professor of human rights here. You know that? He is a professor of governance, he is a professor of statecraft, all this. From the modern political science perspective, administration perspective, management perspective, he already knows. But for the benefit of others, let me speak about it. And then let us go into the origins of these things in the Vedas. Then let us come to Mahabharata and case studies from Mahabharata, how to deal with this. We all know that human rights is a new word. We have not heard this before. For example, did Mahatma Gandhi talk about human rights? No. That word was not used. He was talking about, he was using some other words, civil liberties or civil rights and all that. No, not human rights. You know the word was used by Tilak also, Lokmanya Balagangadhar Tilak. He said, freedom is my birthright, people say. And right, R-I-G-H-T, right, he has borrowed from the French Revolution and French philosophy. And the word birthright he was borrowing from French philosophy only. Rousseau was using words like natural right. And Rousseau himself was borrowing this word natural right from his previous political philosophers. And he was borrowing it, Lokmanya Tilak was borrowing it. But obviously that was not a traditional Hindu word, it was not a traditional Indian word. So, there are historians of independence movement, national movement who tell you that all our national movement leaders were borrowing all the ideas including nation, nationalism, national movement, birthright, everything from French nationalism and French romanticism. We agree with that. Yes, they were Western educated and they borrowed these ideas from their understanding of French Revolution only. This is not the forum it is not the decided theme for this forum to discuss whether nation, nationalism were there in the ancient India or not. Yesterday when some of the students were asking me whether there was this concept of Bharata Varsha or Bharata in ancient India, in ancient Indian literature, I showed directly from the book. Now, you have to bring books and show them. Hey, take this page. Yeah, so that Mahabharata in Bhishma Parva, when Sanjaya talks to Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya, Why is my son Duryodhana so much after this land? Particularly after Bharatavarsha. He uses the word, Dhritarashtra uses the word Bharatavarsha. Why is he having so much greed for acquiring Bharatavarsha? And then Sanjaya goes on explaining the richness of Bharatavarsha. Why a king should be greedy or would be greedy, could be greedy to get hold of this land called Bharatavarsha. He says so many rivers, he goes on listing the rivers. He goes on listing the mines, which metals are available, where gold is available, where copper is available. All the richness. Why, if a country is rich, one of the professors from Jain University, Bangalore, was asking me, okay, it is all rich. In what way is it connected to Duryodhana? He was asking me. If a country is rich, in what way is it connected to the king? King gets taxes out of that, right? If the country is rich, more taxes. And unless all the taxes are going to the same king, there cannot be agreed for that. Because there is the same king collecting taxes from all over the place that is being discussed as Bharatavarsha, we can say that there was a political unity that the British people were asking for. The British people always said there was no political unity. You might have words like Bharatvarsha, Jambudvipa, Aryavarta, all these things, but there was no political unity. It was not ruled by the same king. But if Sanjaya was explaining to Dhritarashtra, your Duryodhana is greedy for Bharatavarsha all because it has so much of richness, unless Duryodhana is getting the taxes from all these areas which are rich, why should he be greedy for it? Right? So, the very talk, the very spirit of the talk between Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra is telling you that there was political unity also. And there was geographical unity. And cultural unity anyway was there. So, nation was already there by the time of composition of Mahabharata, and it was called Bharatavarsha. So, the concept of nation, Lokmanya Balagangadhar Tilak or Mahatma Gandhi might have borrowed from the French Revolution, but the idea of nation, the spirit of nation, feeling of nation was already thousands of years old in India. Similarly, the idea of right that Tilak was talking about, he might have borrowed the word right from the French Revolution, but similarly, as nationalism and nation, right was also a very old concept in India. For example, when Pandavas were being sympathized by Drona, Bhishma and all that, every time they used to say, see, Paitrukam Rajyam. What Dharmaraja is asking for, Yudhishthira is asking for, is Paitrukam Rajyam. Paitrukam means from his Pitra, from his Pita. He has to get that land. So, what is Paitrukam? It is a right. It is a right for the share of the land, for the share of kinghood. There is a right they are talking about. So, unless there is a right, Paitrukam right, why would they talk about it? So, there was already the idea of right. And today, as part of that so-called Hindu law created by the Britishers and later dumped on us by Ambedkar and Nehru for the civil rights and marriage, divorce, Hindu Marriage Act also they created. How we should marry? Ambedkar and Nehru tell us. How we should divorce? Ambedkar and Nehru tell us. They created this so-called Hindu Marriage Act and Hindu law, and further they were depending on P.V. Kane's translation of Dharma Shastra, and P.V. Kane was translating the whole Dharma Shastra as if there was a monolithic view of Dharma from all these books, and by borrowing all that, in any case, they are telling you that you have property inheritance laws inside Manusmriti, Daya Bhaga, Mitakshara, all these things are property inheritance laws only, that is, they are already there and you have to follow them. Okay, by that they are agreeing that right to property is already there. Unless there is a right to property, why should there be mitakshara? Why should there be dayabhaga? Why should there be different property rights for Aurasaputra, Ishtaputra and Dattaputra? Where are they coming from? Into PV Kane, right? So, the idea that right itself is a new idea that has come from the West into Hinduism or India is absolutely wrong just from the face of it, just by a superficial browsing of the ideas in Hinduism, you will understand that they were talking already about rights. Property right, for example, here. And okay, let us keep this aside and see what the Westerners do when they talk about human rights. Just go to Wikipedia and read human rights. They say the idea of human rights has been inherent in the idea of justice. And the idea of justice is inherent in the idea of natural law. And the idea of natural law was already there among the Greeks. See, just as we have a habit of tracing everything in the Vedas in India, they have the habit of tracing everything into Greek philosophy. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, they have done everything. So, human rights is also there already inherent in natural law for them. They trace it from the natural law of Aristotle. When they do it, it's okay. But if I say that human rights were already inherent in dharma, then no, how can that be inherent? Because natural law is an English word. Right is an English word. English word right has to have roots in English word natural law. English word right cannot have its roots in Sanskrit word dharma. How can it have, right? If I say that justice, the idea of justice was already inherent in dharma, and just as you say that your idea of human rights or natural rights or whatever, you are tracing back into justice and natural law that was there in the Greeks. If I say that justice was inherent in dharma and dharma was actually very close to natural law, to a large extent Hegel, for example, borrows the idea of natural law not just from Aristotle, not just from St. Thomas Aquinas, he is borrowing it from his studies of dharma from India also. If you read Hegel in his footnotes, there is a huge amount of reference to in Hindu literature, Indian literature. All the Hindu literature which was already translated with the help of Daro Shikoh and into Persian, and from Persian it got translated into European languages and it got translated into German. And if you read people like Nietzsche or Hegel or whatever, there are large amount of references to this literature. So Hegel was already looking into dharma, and with natural law in Aristotle, for example, Hegel could not have talked about an equilibrium of natural law. When it gets disturbed, it restores itself. This is not there in Aristotle. A disturbance of natural law and getting restored. Yesterday we were talking about it. That's there in Marxism also. So that's not there. That is there in Hinduism. In Hinduism, Krishna says, whenever dharma gets disturbed, whenever dharma gets glani, there are attempts to restore it. Okay, people say that Krishna claims that he will take avatara to restore it, but whenever you read Bhagavad Gita from a rational understanding, all of you, I am telling you, please don't take that there is a guy called Krishna standing here and he is going to take birth and all that. You read in your textbooks stories, say for example, of Taj Mahal. If the author wants to tell you about Taj Mahal, he might write in the form of autobiography of Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal keeps telling, I have been here from 300 years. I was constructed in the memory of Mumtaz Mahal. So whenever that Taj Mahal in that story is saying I, we convert, we translate that into Taj Mahal has been there for 300 years. Taj Mahal was constructed in the memory of Mumtaz Mahal, right? So in Bhagavad Gita also, whenever Krishna says I, then you have to say that the concept which is being represented as Krishna there is doing all this. For example, when Krishna says, Kalosmi lokan samhartum pravrittaha, we have to understand that it is not Krishna who is speaking, it is Kala which is speaking there. And whenever you see all these concepts there, for example, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtaha, it's not one guy called Krishna who was sitting under a tree one fine morning and said, all of you people come here, from today you are going to live according to Chaturvarnya. Okay, you are Brahmins, you are Kshatriyas, you are Vaishyas and Shudras. One fine morning Krishna ordered everyone to live like that and they started living like that. It's not that. Everyone knows, it's a common sense that social systems come into existence by themselves. No one creates them. Languages are not created. Cultures are not created. And social systems are not created by single individuals. They come as part of evolution. And that force of evolution, that force that is participating in this is calling itself Krishna. That is saying that I am responsible for all this. So, in Bhagavad Gita also, whenever it is said that I will take birth again, it is that force in nature that is saying that I will take birth again. Okay? The sustaining ability of creation, sustaining ability of nature is saying that I am going to be responsible for the restoration of dharma. So this idea Hegel understood and he put it into his idea of restoration of natural law. So this idea of natural law passed from India through dharma to Hegel can be established with references, with examples like this. So when you understand that natural law or dharma, which in Western language is natural law, is being shown by the Western authors to be source of human rights, obviously dharma is the source of human rights. Any questions? If you agree, Nitin, you can raise questions whenever you want. Okay. Because it is only you who probably have counter views already in the literature that has been dumped on you, in all the books that have been dumped on him in his past education. So you might come up with those questions. This in my classes. So human rights, the word could be new, the word could be an English word, the word could be of European origin, but it is inherent in dharma. When in dharma we say justice, it is human rights only. Okay? And what is the origin of this word dharma? Was it invented by Mahabharata or Vyasa? It is a Vedic word. It has been there right from the beginning of the Veda. Okay? So, Veda itself was already talking about dharma, indirectly it was talking about rights. One beautiful thing about Vedic literature is that this word human, it doesn't get repeated so often as in European literature. If you read Bhagavad Gita, when human has to be referred, they say bhutani. Annad bhavanti bhutani. Or at any other place, bhutani, jiva jatani, jivaha. Every time they use this word jiva or bhuta, which is a general word for creatures. It's not a specific word for humans. It is today that the modern people have been saying that rights are not there only for humans, even animals have got rights. There are animal rights. All creatures have rights. And that's a new innovation for them. That's a new revelation that's a new flash, PETA, all these organizations come from that, and they talk about animal rights. But whenever Indian literature referred to human, it did not refer to only human. So to use a technical term, Indian worldview was not anthropocentric. Okay? Anthropocentric. Anthropocentric means human-centric. In environmentalist literature, in ecological literature, they keep using this word anthropocentric. They say it is the anthropocentric view which has caused ecological crisis. Anthropocentric means thinking human being as the center of everything, considering everything to have been born only for humans is responsible for the ecological crisis. This is what they say. But in India, throughout, people keep asking me, sir, is there a book which talks about human nature, human this, human that? I say it's very difficult to trace in Indian literature, Hindu, ancient Indian literature, because most of the times they talk about creatures in general, bhutani in general, not human in particular. So, okay? So, it is not anthropocentric. So, when they talk about rights in dharma, they are talking about rights of all creatures, including human beings. So, the view of human rights that is available in Vedic literature, itihasas and Puranas is beyond anthropocentric view that we find in European literature and particularly Christianity. Yesterday I was already telling you about Lynn White Jr.'s article, Roots of the Ecological Crisis. Did you all make a note of the article's name? Roots of the Ecological Crisis, Lynn White Jr. And this article traces the source of ecological crisis to New Testament. It traces it to Genesis of the Holy Book, Bible. Okay? And that is anthropocentric because obviously, very clearly, there is no scope for interpretation here. Jehovah created Adam. Adam is human. And he was saying, this is all for you to enjoy. Come, you enjoy all this. So, obviously, it is anthropocentric only. The view in Genesis is anthropocentric. And the view in science and technology is all anthropocentric only because European Enlightenment was considering that all nature was for humans to enjoy and exploit. So, they were all anthropocentric only. There is no dispute about it. And when ecological movements, animal rights movements today are saying that you have been anthropocentric and now we are bringing animal rights, they are right. Because they are referring to European views. Early modern European views, yes, they were anthropocentric only. That is why animal rights movements have every right to blame the early modern European view to be anthropocentric. But they cannot point out a finger towards Hindu philosophy and Hindu worldview because it has always been beyond anthropocentric view. It was talking always about the rights of all the creatures. For example, whenever Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha or any Rakshasa, any Asura is discussed in any Itihasa or any Purana, they are not discussed as though they were troubling only human beings. It's always mentioned in the description that he is troubling all the creatures, all the jivas, and it is Bhudevi who goes, the entire earth goes in the form of a woman, goes and reports to Vishnu that she is being troubled, earth is being troubled. It's not humans getting troubled. Sages go, rishis are getting troubled. Humans are also getting troubled, that is also listed. But it is listed there that even aquatic creatures are getting troubled. Creatures in the air, wind, are also getting troubled. And then the earth itself goes and says that I am getting troubled. So, it shows that the anti-ecological creatures like Rakshasas and Asuras, Basically, what is the definition of any asura rakshasa? Any anti-environmentalist is asura. Okay, that is the definition of asura. Asura or rakshasa. All the asuras and rakshasas in itihasas and puranas, if you study the behavior of them, any anti-environmentalist is an asura and a rakshasa. Okay. So, they are violating the rights of all beings, not only humans, the rights of rishis, rights of aquatic animals, they are violating rights of everyone. Actually, they are indirectly also violating the rights of people because they are keeping Agni under control, they are keeping Vayu under control, all nature forces they are controlling. So, by that also they are violating the rights of people. Okay. So, now with this basic introduction that human right or general rights of all creatures, creature rights, living organism rights that we are talking today, they are all there in Vedic literature, in the Vedas and the Itihasa Puranas is now established. If there are any questions, you please raise. Then from that we can.
Right based. And there is emphasis on duty over rights in India.
Yeah.
Can you tell
that's
something?
an argument. Yesterday I think you met me and we were discussing deontological view of ethics and all that. Were you who was discussing? Yeah, okay.
But this is not in the view of ethics, but society.
In general, there is a view that duties are discussed and rights are not discussed. So, when Bhudevi goes and reports to Vishnu that she is getting troubled, is she talking about her right to live or is she talking about the duty of anyone? The things that we have listed now, till now, do they have any duty part in them? No. Okay. For the benefit of those who want to know the meanings of these words like dharma, okay, Nitin. There is nothing about duty. Okay. There is nothing about duty in this. We are not talking about duty of anyone here, except in the sense that not to violate the right of the next creature is your duty. That's okay. Is it Vishnu's duty to protect? No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not the duty of Vishnu to protect. Okay? It is the nature of Vishnu to protect. Okay? It is not the duty of Vishnu to protect. It is the nature of Vishnu to protect. Don't ever get into these things like functional classification and Trimurti is a functional classification. Brahman has the duty, function of creation, and Vishnu has the duty, function of sustenance, and Shiva has the duty, function of devolution. It is not destruction. Within Hinduism, within Vedic literature, there is no concept of destruction at all. Nasato vidyate bhavaha, nabhavo vidyate sataha is the basic principle on which Vedic worldview rests. Nasato vidyate bhavaha, nabhavo vidyate sataha. From nothing gets created out of nothing, everything comes from something. Okay? In Bhagavad Gita, it is a half of verse of Bhagavad Gita. It is articulated in Bhagavad Gita. It is the conglomeration, it is collection of all the laws of conservation. Why to say law of conservation of mass, law of conservation of energy, law of conservation of linear momentum, law of conservation of angular momentum, law of conservation of sky, law of conservation of my bag. Why? separately for everything. There is one single law of conservation. Everything is conserved. Okay? So, why to say mass can neither be created nor be destroyed, energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, mass can get converted into energy, E is equal to mc square, you have linear momentum laws, why to do all this separately? All that is put together into one statement, nothing can get created out of nothing, everything is created out of something. And this is the basis of cyclic view of things also. Cyclic view of space, cyclic view of time, cyclic view of everything. Everything is getting just cycled. Okay. So, Shiva is not for destruction because it cannot be destroyed. He is only devolving. He is only making manifest things into unmanifest form. Okay. So, those things are not their duties. Brahman's duty is not, they are all natures of these. They are all nature. That's what I was about to tell you from the etymology of the word dharma. Dharma means nature. Nature of nature is dharma. Yesterday also, I think day before yesterday also, I was telling you that dharma is the nature of nature. What is the etymology of the word? Dhar itself is, it means sustenance only, sustain. To dhar, even in contemporary North Indian languages, dharna, all this, it is to hold, to sustain, okay, to put on. So, dharma means to sustain. So, the very word dharma is talking about sustenance only, right? And that sustenance happens because of the simultaneous happening of creation and destruction. Let me take the example of bodies of living organisms. At every moment, cells are getting created and cells are getting destroyed. Death of cells, creation of cells is happening. Only because of that continuous simultaneous happening of cell destruction and cell creation, this thing is existing. Okay. So, the existence of body, which is a result of creation and destruction, is Vishnu. And the death of cells is Shiva. Creation of cells is Brahman. So, this kind of every chemical reaction is loss of the reactants, birth of the products. So, the loss of the reactants is the Shiva, birth of the products is Brahman. But reactions are always taking place and they are sustaining nature, that is Vishnu. So, these are not duties, they are happening. You are just observing that they are happening. This is there, this is out there for you to see. Whose duty is that to do all this? You are just observing and noting that it is happening. So, you are just noting, observing that there is Vishnu. You are just observing and noting that there is Brahman. You are just noting and observing that there is Shiva. You have not created Brahman, Vishnu or Shiva and assigned some duties to them. Hey Brahman, come, create. No such thing. Okay? So, it is not the duty of Vishnu to do anything, it is the nature of Vishnu. The force of sustenance that is already inherent in nature, that is responsible for what we call avatars. But what we are saying in the name of avatars is that every time there is a destruction to the nature that is existing, the nature itself is restoring itself, and nature is restoring itself through its sustenance ability, the ability to sustenance. That ability to sustenance is being given the name Vishnu. We are just giving it the name Vishnu. Okay? Now, you understood? There is no duty there? Okay. Now, so, by this understanding, we know that we have a right to live also is actually we have a nature to live actually. We have the feature of living. But when we say right, we are saying that the other person is not allowed to kill us. He has no right to kill us. How do you know that we have no right to kill? Go kill tiger. What happens if you attempt to kill a tiger? It comes and kills you. What is it saying? By doing that, it is indirectly articulating that I have a right to live, you have no right to kill me. If there is a sparrow sitting there, you just put your step there, it is jumping, it is flying away. It is telling you that don't kill me, you cannot kill me, I am escaping. You don't have a right to kill me. So, the expression of all creatures to save themselves from death, from offense from other creatures, is showing that they all know that they have a right to live. You understand? Every creature is struggling to live. When there is an attempt to offend them or hurt them, damage them, they are protecting themselves, they are asserting their right to live. And horns of bovine animals, the horns have come because the horns are articulating their right to live. They are protecting themselves. And however right or wrong Darwin was, he talked about natural selection and adaptation. And why the adaptation is happening? The adaptation is also happening to sustain life, and those adaptations are articulations of right to live. The creature is asserting, articulating its right to live by adapting to the situation. It is telling us, I have a right to live and I am living. So, all life is already articulating its right to live. Okay, so it's not that Draupadi's right to live was written in the constitution of Hastinapura. When Draupadi was being offended, Draupadi was being violated, when Dushyasana and Duryodhana, the Dushta Chatushtaya, were disrobing, Draupadi would have reacted like a cow with its horns. Right? Any woman, when you attack her, when you try to rape her, she is reacting just as any other animal. Just as any animal is saying that I have a right to live, I have a right to my body, I have a right to, even a tree is telling you that. There are many trees which can protect themselves. Their adaptation is like that. So, this assertion, articulation of right to body by Draupadi was not assured by Hastinapura's constitution. It is inherent in nature. Nature itself has secured this natural right to body in Draupadi. But naturally, because some creatures are stronger, some creatures are weaker, in a forest, a hare also has got a right to live, but tiger, out of its right to live, attacks it, and it gets hurt, it gets killed, it gets eaten. So here, Duryodhana, Dushyasana, using their masculine, muscular power, were overpowering a woman called Draupadi, and they were disrobing. Though she was asserting her life, asserting her right to her body and to her safety, she was not able to do anything. She was helpless because of the overpowering by. Individuality, yes. Individuality as from the 18th century, 19th century Western philosophy, yes, you are right. Because it is they who started this whole individual society dichotomy, and even within Western philosophy, Aristotle did not have it. Individual society dichotomy was not there with Aristotle, Plato or Socrates. Even with Byzantines also did not have individual and society. It all started in the 18th century, 19th century philosophy, and there artificially they created this fight between individual and society. it is a fight between cells and the body. If my cells fight with my body, do they fight? Do your body cells fight with your body? Individuals fighting with society is like that. Individuals make society, and artificially these 18th century philosophers, they created this issue of individual society conflict. Right? And then they said individual rights are superior to social norms, and the whole thing that we see in Western philosophy today, all individualism, which got articulated in Romanticism, and all the superiority of society that is articulated in Hegel, and that people think has led to fascism, all that. So, this whole nuisance started with the artificial division of individual and society, right? You agree? Nitin?
I agree to the idea of dichotomy between individualism and individuals and society arose in 18th century, but it has its own historic reasons.
Okay.
And it's not, I believe it's not just people think that societal norms led to fascism.
See, Nitin not attending the 2 classes has historical reasons.
Yes.
And he attending today has historical reasons. Fan revolving also has historical reasons.
Definitely.
Everything has historical reasons. That does not justify anything.
Why not?
Anything having reason is not a justification. Anything having reason is not a support for its coming into existence. Yes, everything has reasons. Every effect has to have a cause.
Yes.
Okay, in Vedanta we have certain facts which have no cause, and causes are of several kinds. That's a different matter. But everything in general has to have a cause, right? So, having cause is not a justification. You come on, now you go ahead.
No, wait. There is no idea, question of being justified, right?
Yeah,
because
you
for
me,
example,
no, is it justified? Is it right? Is it correct because it has historical reasons?
it's not about the correctness of the philosophy, it's about the utility, what happened.
You keep the mic a little away from you. Okay.
The thing is, when the idea of knowledge or dharma or law, all these things exist as an epistemological entity, and the effects of this epistemological entity in human life, in human consequences, there is a kind of gray area. I understand that. I also believe, because when we discuss governance, we always discussed in this relationship between individual, society and state. These 3 particular concepts, how it interacts with each other. So there is no, I believe there is no negativeness or nothing wrong in discussing individual rights thing. For example, rights come from if you look at the question whether collectivity or a group has got any rights, whether as we assert human rights, individual rights, we don't speak about collective rights, we speak about collective interest. There's a huge discussion happening about what is collective right and collective interest, whether collective right is inherently against individual right. So these discussions are yet to be answered, at least in the Western knowledge. I am not sure about what happened in Mahabharata or ancient Indian jurisprudence, but at least in Western jurisprudence, these discussions is been still going on.
Yeah, okay. So the student asked a question whether this naturality of right, that's what we were discussing. The right is already there. Right is already being articulated by creatures. So right is not being taught, for example, to a bovine animal that you have to articulate your right to live through your horns. We were discussing that. He was saying, so is it against the idea of individual rights? Yes, I said yes, it's against the idea of individual rights, because the very foundation of this as individual rights and societal norms led in Romanticism, for example, a quarrel between individual right of lovers and their fathers and the parents. There is a huge amount of lover literature, romantic literature in the modern times, where the running theme is children love each other and parents come in the way. Society comes in the way. And now that has gone into the public, people have accepted that, and children bought those ideas, and children begin to think that yes, parents are always enemies. Parents are always bad people. And loving is a right. So, falling in love is my right and they opposing is their nature. This has been eternal. It has come into existence like this. And all these philosophies like, for example, fascism being articulated in the form of nationalism. No, Nitin, you do not know. Read Hindu articles. Every time they talk about nationalism, every time they mention nationalism, immediate next word is fascism. All because Hitler was a nationalist and a fascist. And they want to use this example to threaten the whole world. See, this fellow is talking about nationalism. He is going to turn into Hitler. Be very careful. Send him out. Kill him. Get rid of him. Because Hitler is taking birth now. Be careful. Right? So, equating collectivism, equating nationalism with fascism has come from Hegel's words. Okay, you have to sacrifice the individual's rights at the altar of the state. And he says, and I don't say that, Mahabharata does not say that, Veda does not say that, they immediately attribute all these Hegel's words to Veda. They attribute all this to Mahabharata. They all attribute all this to RSS. They attribute all this to BJP. They attribute all this to whoever says nationalism. Because Hegel has said this. It is Hegel's business. Why should I support or oppose Hegel? He was a German. He was talking in a German context of individual and society debate. They have created this. Why should I get into all this? You understand from where I am coming? So this whole, and individualism articulated in romanticism that reflected in so much of romanticist literature, and that so-called collectivism that has reflected in the so-called fascism of Mussolini and Hitler and attributed to Hegel is being attributed to everyone who talks about nation or nationalism. That is the danger.
And why we may support Hegel or try to understand Hegel or oppose Hegel, and actually we may oppose Hegel because those people who study Hegel's philosophy in depth, they realize that it's very nonsensical and it's very non-scientific.
Correct, obviously. Thank you for that. Yeah, once you understand Hegel, though we have been saying that Hegel read Upanishads, Hegel read our Dharma Shastra, Hegel read even Puranas, and he was borrowing the ideas from there. Though we said that, all said and done, Hegel is into all the problems of his Christian sources, all the problems of his sources in history. He was a historical determinist. And in my opinion, he was the first historical determinist in the history of philosophy. So there are all kinds of problems with him. But my issue was only with the individual thing, individual rights. So when we are talking about rights, we are not talking in the sense of individualist rights. Not only individual rights. Individual rights are individual rights. All individuals have rights. They are individualist rights that we are talking about. Individualism is to place individual over the society, in conflict with the society. That is danger. That is the danger that we see in what is called as individualism. So, we are not talking about individualist rights. Okay, now let us come back to Draupadi. Draupadi was violated by some males, Duryodhana, Dushasana, Shakuni and Karna, all the four Dushta, Chatushtaya, we call them. And Draupadi said, "O Yudhishthira, O my husbands, all the 5 husbands, you are also responsible for the violation because you are not responding to this." She went on saying this, not only at that place, she went on saying this even at the time of Bhagavad Dhyana Parva or whatever, Udyoga Parva, during Udyoga Parva also. Whenever she got a chance to speak, she said, while talking to Krishna, she says, "Look at these guys, these 5 fellows. The way they kept silent when I was getting disrobed." And she went on saying this, but this is not communicated to the modern generation. They say recently also when Audrey Trusk was making some filthy language, she was using some filthy language against Rama in the name of Sita in her Twitter tweet, and there was a huge debate about it. They talk as though Sita was a docile woman. Rama asked her to get into fire. She, with a bending head, she gets into fire. She does not talk about anything. But you have to read Valmiki Ramayana. She chided, she scolded Rama. But she did not say the words, filthy words that Audrey Trusk was mentioning. But she chided Rama. And yesterday we were talking about Dushyanta and Shakuntala incident. You know what happens in Mahabharata, Vyasa's Mahabharata? When Shakuntala goes to the court of Dushyanta, when he does not recognize, there is a huge speech by Shakuntala towards Dushyanta. And she even uses words like, "Hey Dushyanta, don't think that you can hide. Don't think that no one was present at that time. There was Antaratma present at that time. There was Surya, there was Chandra that was present at that time. There was day, there was night that was present. Veda was present. Everything that is all pervading, they were all watching what you were doing. Don't think that we were alone at that time." And she confronts him in a very aggressive and assertive language. Dushyanta, Shakuntala. You look at any Pativrata for that matter. All Pativratas were Pativratas. They were called Pativratas only because they were aggressive and assertive. Look at Anasuya, for example. What did she do? Trimurti asked her to serve them as a nude. Trimurti are the topmost gods. There is no god above Trimurti, right, in Hinduism? They committed this offense against Anasuya. They asked her to come in nude form. Superficially we can say offense, but inherently from a logic of the story, from insider's logic, it was a pariksha, they say. Okay, in whatever way they asked her to do that, what did she do? She converted all of them into babies. Is it not a punishment? They were fed by her, and the wives of Trimurti come there and they ask for their husbands. Anasuya says, "They are there, take them." Babies. Is it not an aggressive expression of saying that no one can do this to me? No one can ask me to come nude to serve. Right? Savitri, what did she do? Savitri haunted Yama. She did not just walk like this and beg Yama, "Please, please give the life of my husband." She just haunted him. And haunting whom? Yama looks so ferocious and so frightening, so terrorizing, horrible, black fellow with big red eyes. And Yama is such that even a person who is about to die will die after seeing him. And you have no capacity to see him. You have no power to see him. Savitri only was able to see him because she was a Pativrata. If somebody beside us dies in a hospital, can we see Yama coming there? But she was able to see because she was a Pativrata. And she was able to follow Yama because she had that out of body experience ability. People don't tell you that Savitri left her physical body there and Sukshma Sharira was following Yama. They show in the theatres and movies and all that as if Savitri was just walking with her physical body. It's not possible. No physical body can travel into the other worlds. So Savitri left her body there. With Sushma Sharira she was following Yama and she was not afraid of that frightening creature. This not being afraid is boldness, courage. So this Pativrata is being shown to be a bold woman. And she was haunting. And she confronted Yama. Yama said, people don't tell you that this was the conversation. People, when they narrate the story of Savitri, they just show that she tricked him. But what was the conversation? Yama said, see, ma'am, this is my duty to take away lives of people whenever they are scheduled. I cannot skip the schedule. I cannot excuse anyone. I have to take everyone. This is the dharma. This is the nature of nature. If I don't do this, nature of nature is violated and nature gets disturbed. Then Savitri said, see, I am a Pativrata. All Pativratas are maintaining their families perfectly. If they don't maintain their families perfectly, the ahutis in Shraddha do not reach the pitas correctly. If the ahutis in Shraddha do not reach the pitas correctly, pitas are not sustained. If pitas are not sustained, Pitruloka is not sustained. If Pitruloka is not sustained, all the lokas above the Pitruloka are not sustained. If all the lokas above are not sustained, your loka, Naraka loka is also not sustained. You are also not sustained. So, I am sustaining you, mind you, Yama. I am sustaining you and your loka. Pativratas are sustaining. She says, and Yama feels completely flabbergasted and he gets impressed. He says, I am impressed, ma'am. Wow, what a point. Correct. Even my loka, even Naraka loka is being sustained by Pativratya. I agree. So as a gift I am giving you 3 boons, he says. People always talk about the 3 boons in Savitri's story. How did she get those 3 boons? She got it as a gift. Gift for what? Gift for arguing. Arguing what? Supporting Pativratya dharma as the basis, foundation of every dharma. So, there also she daunted him, she confronted him, she argued with him and she got the life of Satyavanta as a right. She snatched it from the hands of Yama and comes back. So, friends, all Pativratas were bold and courageous women. Okay? Pativratas were bold and courageous women. Have a gun in your pocket. At least a pepper spray gun. Okay? If a man confronts you, just throw pepper spray on him, kill him if necessary, shout at him, yell at him. This is what Mahabharata is asking you to do. This is what Veda, Itihasa, Purana is asking you to do. Have a weapon in your hands. Don't ever cry. Don't ever weep. Like Sita who said to Ravana, "Hey, blade of grass, what can you do to me? There is my husband who is going to come and hate you. He is going to kill you and take me away just easily." That's what Sita did. Sita never sat just like this and kept on weeping under Ashoka tree. No. Sita never even looked at Ravanasura. She picked up a blade of grass and looked at the blade of grass and spoke. As if she was saying that, Ravana, you are a blade of grass. You are nothing in front of me, nothing in front of my husband. Right? So, all Pativratas were bold and courageous women. In modern times, when Swami Vivekananda or any Renaissance leader, in speeches they used to say, our women have to be Sita, Savitri and Anasuya, people used to think that, oh, they are asking all women to be docile women. No, when Vivekananda or any Renaissance leader was saying our women have to be Sita, Savitri and Anasuya, they were having this in mind, that all Pativratas were bold and courageous women. They were able to face the problem. Shakuntala gives a huge speech in Dushyanta's court and she instructs him, she tells him there are witnesses for every action. There are 2 verses on that, and then she goes on to say how a bharya is very important. You know what she says? A bharya is argyarha. Actually, you have to worship me, Dushyanta. I am arghya arha. Argyarham mam, she says. You are insulting. And she goes on saying that bharya is the source of everything. Bharya is the teacher of the husband. Bharya is the teacher of home science to the husband. She is the acharya to husband. She is the source of dharma, artha and kama. She is the source of grihamedhi phala, punya phala of grihamedhi. She is the source of that. That grihamedhi is what? Family yajna. Grihamedhi is family yajnas yajamana. The punya phala that comes by maintaining family is coming only because of bharya. And she is the source of respect. Youngsters may not understand this, but you have to see what happens. A gunda comes to attack another gunda. I have seen hundreds of times. He goes to hit the gunda and looks at the wife of that gunda and says, oh, so sorry. Looking at your wife, I am not able to hit you. She is such a respectable woman. She is such a nice lady. I am not able to do anything, and they leave. Many times, many bad individuals were saved from attacks only because of the respectability of those women. The wives, the pativratya, the saubhagya that they see in the faces of the wives, the tilak that they put, the face with all turmeric on their face, all the flowers with that, they look like Devi. So when a saubhagyavati wife sits beside a bad man, the bad man also gets saved. This is what Shakuntala was telling Dushyanta. Many men are getting saved because of the respectability of their wives only. And whenever you are in trouble, it is your wife who consoles you. In modern times in newspapers, they use words like stress busters. This is a stress buster. Okay, Shakuntala says there is no great stress buster than wife. For you, she goes on giving speech on the qualities of a wife and usefulness, necessity of a wife for a husband. Then she goes on to the topic of sun. She gives a huge lecture on the greatness of sun, how sun is important. There she talks about sun being extension of the father, sun being reflection of father, sun being the ahavaniya coming from Dakshinagni being created from the ahavaniya, and all the Agnis being created from the Garhapatya Agni. She gives comparisons and says, just as Garhapatya Agni is leading to Ahavaniya Agni and Dakshinagni, if sun is coming from the father. She exhibits, demonstrates her scholarship there. She exhibits her knowledge of Veda. She exhibits her ability to withstand fate. She is not surrendering herself to the fate. Some other woman could have said, this is my fate, what can I do? But she did not say that. She went on confronting Dushyanta and finally she wins. She wins because skies speak, divinity speaks in support of her. Okay? So, did the women characters of Itihasas and Puranas assert themselves, assert their rights? Did they fight for their rights? Every story, 2 stories from Mahabharata we have chosen are the story of Shaykhunthala and story of Draupadi. In both the stories, both the women were bold and courageous and confronted the male world and said, "You males, what are you doing?" And finally, she won because during Udyoga Parva also, she said, "You cannot avoid war because you have to punish these people. You have promised to punish them. You have to keep your promise to punish those people, so go to war only. This is my choice," she said. Any other woman would have said, "No war, because after all you are my husband, you might die during the war." But she was a Veera Patni. And she was a Veera Mata. She has Upapandavas. They have to go to war. But she said, only war is the choice. Only war is the choice. And when husbands were talking about Shanti, she was talking about war. And all because she was saying war is justified for the protection, securing of human rights, women's rights. I was violated and they have to get punished. Justice should reach me. So justice can reach me only when there is war and only when Duryodhana is punished, only when Dushyasana is punished. When she describes the destruction of Duryodhana and Dushyasana, the language is so sometimes even disgusting that she says they have to be cut into pieces, small pieces. And I have to see the small pieces of the body of Dushyasana and all that. But that may look very disgusting, but that is Raudra Rasa. That is the Karuna Rasa that you see there. So that is leading to Bibhassa Rasa. The Bibhassa Rasa that comes, Jugupsa that comes from the description of cutting the body into pieces is the result of Raudra. And the Raudra is resulting from the feeling that I was violated, my rights were violated. Okay? Yeah.
In the previous discussion on individualism, how is the dynamic nature of human ego dealt with in Mahabharata in connection to rights? Because as we have observed, the modern concept is definite rights, definitive rights, as in contrast with the concept of the Vedic concept as they define it as relative rights. The right of an individual in relation to the family, the right of an individual in relation to the society, or the right of an individual in relation to the Rashtra. So in this context, how is the dynamic nature of human ego? Because it is that functionality of the ego that is responsible for the right.
You brought this question at a very right time because I am going to talk about Amba now. Okay? Yeah. Okay, we will discuss Amba after break. Amba is LGBT topic.